Hi, everyone. My name is Xochitl Cazador, and I lead ecosystem growth at the Celo Foundation. I'm going to speak to you today about how ReFi has the power to change the world. In 2016, we witnessed a historic moment with the signature of the Paris Climate Accords. But since then, we've been moving further and further away from those goals that were established. Last year, to the next slide. Last year, the UN published the Emissions Gap Report, which was titled "The Window is Closing," and it stated that we must cut emissions by 46% to achieve global catastrophe. One more. And at the same time, global poverty has been increasing for the first time in decades. Vulnerable communities in particular have been especially hit with income losses twice as hard and have seen devastating stepbacks to areas like education and health. Go one more. So who am I to speak to you about this? I'm a first-generation Mexican-American. My grandparents and mother are from a small town in central Mexico that didn't have access to running water or electricity. They moved to the US in hope for a better future and harvested the fields of Silicon Valley before it became Google, Apple, and Facebook. I've witnessed firsthand how our existing financial system fails those that need it most, but I've also witnessed the power of technical innovation to uplift communities like my own. So it's time for urgent action. Our existing financial system prioritizes short-term profits over long-term sustainability. We've seen the impact that it's had to the environment, to social justice, and even to our economy. So I imagine you to imagine a new future, a path where regenerative finance can create shared prosperity for everyone. If we think about ReFi in general, I know many of you in this room are either working in the space or very interested in it, we're really seeing the combination of three systems that are working together. The environmental, if you go back one, environmental, economical, and social justice. We move one more. So how can regenerative finance change the world? We can build protocols that really enable economic resilience, that enable social justice and inclusion, and really empower and saves our environment. To the next slide. And what I wanted to do here was just not talk to you about ReFi and how it has the potential to change the world, but really show you by talking about some of the use cases that we're seeing built on Celo that are doing just that. There's a glare, so it's a little hard for me to see. So the first one is a project called Ethic Hub that deploys under-collateralized loans to smallhold farmers in areas like Chiapas, Mexico. And these farmers, if you go back one to stay on that, these farmers receive microloans to purchase seed or to purchase equipment. They're able to then take their goods and take them to market. Instead of traditionally what would happen is you would have a bean hoarder that would acquire all these seeds, combine them, and then take them to market. So you have farmers for the first time that are seeing their goods sold in areas like New York or areas like Europe, and the smile on their faces to see firsthand how their goods are now in the hands of others has been very empowering and uplifting to see. The next project is really focused on universal basic income. Anna's somewhere here. Good from a good dollar, and also a project called Impact Market that really is providing UBI to vulnerable communities. This picture here is the Women's Rights Initiative in Uganda. This is a nonprofit that is run exclusively by women. They not only receive UBI, but also enable microlending in their community. These women are victims of domestic violence and are teaching members of their community basically areas like financial inclusion, financial education, and it's been this really beautiful thing to witness these communities being uplifted. If you go to the next slide, grassroots economics is really using, again, this power of blockchain. I think blockchain is essentially this programmable money, this ability to kind of use this technology to promote the economy. And Grassroots is using a protocol that's based on demurrage to provide economic stimulus via mutual credit. They've deployed to over 80,000 communities 4 million in mutual credit, which has been really amazing to see. Will Reddick, for those of you that are interested, is a force to be reckoned with, and the work that he's been doing on the ground for the last 20 plus years has been amazing. So Celo's mission is to build a regenerative ecosystem that creates conditions of prosperity for all. Go to the next slide. It's a platform that's built for radical regeneration. And there's 3 elements that I'd love to cover with you today. You can advance, yeah. The first is really focused around the environment. Celo was launched on Earth Day of 2020. It was the first layer 1 blockchain at the time to allocate a percentage of the block rewards to offset carbon. We also see many projects, many of them in this room, that are focused on the creation of environmental digital assets. The second is really an ecosystem that's solving real-world problems. There are thousands of projects that are building on the Celo ecosystem, primarily in emerging markets that are, again, using this technology to uplift their communities. And the third is this global diverse community. Really, again, like these projects that are based in Latin America, in Africa, and in Asia. Next one. I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about how we think about success for blockchain and for Web3. So if we're really committed to this notion of building a regenerative ecosystem, then we have to have a shared vision for how we measure success. If you advance to the next slide. Today, when we think about Web3 and blockchain, we look at metrics like total value locked. And while that's an important metric, go to the next one, it's really geared towards whales, right? So basically individuals, right, that have large stakes of cryptocurrency, right, and it's measuring that impact. What I'm suggesting is that we change the narrative. If we go to the next slide, and really think about this shared metric for success. So in 2019, before Celo Mainnet was even launched, one of my colleagues, Willie, published this theory of change and how we think about measuring success within the Celo ecosystem. And we really anchored on 4, if you go back a slide for a second, 4 key metrics. The first one is focused on basic needs are met. So that is, do individuals have access to, a shelter, to food, to healthcare, to education? The second is really around individual growth. Are they able to grow their businesses, as an example? The third is really, are we supporting each other? Do we have communities that are coming together and to really uplift each other? And the fourth is really about saving the planet. To date, there are over 2.5 million active wallets on the Celo platform. And if you go to the next slide, we have seen 550,000 deployed in universal basic income. This is typically less than $1 a day that people are receiving. 4 million micro workers, 4.1 million microloans that have been issued, and 4,300 tons of carbon that have been offset. So in order to achieve this vision of a shared prosperity, we need to have collective action by everyone that's in this room. Next one. So what does that mean? What does that look like? Really, that looks like education and awareness. Are we engaging others outside of our spheres in this conversation? Are we supporting each other? We're seeing amazing innovation that's been happening in the area of decentralized science. The third is really advocacy. So really using our voice. Many of us are here, obviously for Climate Week, to speak to regulators, to speak to heads of state, to really understand how we could use this technology for good instead of what we see most often in the headlines today. And I invite you all to join the movement. If you're interested in learning more, you can flip to the next slide. There is a QR code here that will allow you to explore some of the projects that I mentioned in this talk today. We also have something called the Alliance for Prosperity, where we bring a coalition of individuals together across public sector, private sector, to really talk about how we're using this technology for good. And welcome any of you to join. All right. Thank you.